I slept with my daughter's ex-boyfriend and he got me pregnant. Today we're reading Reddit confessions and I've got a feeling it's going to be pretty horrifying. Enjoy, guys. I slept with my daughter's ex-boyfriend. He got me pregnant and I had an abortion. They got back together and got married. Okay, I'm not ready for this. This was back in, let me think, maybe 1997. I was 38 and my daughter was 18 and she was dating Harry, who was 24. I was an alcoholic and I dabbled in other drugs. Mainly, I don't think I can say it, I was not a good person, let alone a good mother. Not like I was abusive to my daughter or anything, but I was generally inattentive and I cared more about my alcohol and my drugs than her, especially in her teen years. I'm 14 years sober now. I disapproved of my daughter dating Harry, but I never told her why. He would flirt with me constantly and the age difference was creeping me out. Also, he was an alcoholic and a drug user like me. She broke up with him over his alcoholism. Soon after she moved away, not too far, but regardless, she didn't live with me anymore. Harry kept on calling me and asking if we wanted to get drinks. I turned him down, but then one day he said he had a bunch of you know what, and I couldn't resist. He came over, we did the coke, and we ended up having sex. He was a very good looking guy. He looked a lot like that ridiculous 80s Justin Bieber picture that was on the front page today. That's actually what made me think about him. For the next few months, maybe like 3 or 4 months, he would sometimes come over and we would have and do drugs and get drunk together. Any drug addict knows what it's like to have a drug addict buddy in that way. Then I got pregnant. I knew that it was by him. I'd had without a condom a few times stupidly. I never told him that I was pregnant and I went and got the abortion and I kept it a secret. Anyway, I stopped seeing him after that. It was too weird. I also got sober for like 4 months before relapsing. Fast forward 2 years and my daughter contacts me and tells me that she got back with Harry and that he's fully sober. I was mortified. He was gonna tell her that we slept together and she's gonna hate me for life. They came over one day and said hi, and when my daughter was gone, Harry told me that there's no reason to tell her about what happened, and I agreed. It's been 16 years of marriage on their part. They've got a kid together. Harry got cancer and then beat it. I got sober and that's pretty much it. I don't see them very often. They live in Texas and I live on the East Coast. But whenever I do, there's always that tension between me and Harry. It's the first thing that comes to either of our minds. I can just tell. Not like sexual tension, like why did we have to do that? What the f***'s wrong with us? That kind of tension. I think about this often, especially when I see my grandson. I always think that could have been my son if things had gone different. But wow, what a disaster that would have been if I decided to keep that child. The top comment says, and this is the reason I come here. God damn. The comment below that says, now that's a confession. I'm so sick of the confessions about sneaking cookies in the closet or farting on my girlfriend's back when she's asleep. Your kid's partner and getting their abortion? Wow. Yeah, I don't even really know what to say, to be honest. I thought the stuff that we read normally was horrifying. The comment below that one says, firstly, what the f***? Secondly, what the f***? Thirdly, this is why I'm on this subreddit. Okay, the next one says, I'm the guy that used to put extra McNuggets in your order. Oh my god, so different. Like this one's gonna be a cute one. The polar opposite of what we just read. If you ordered 4 nuggets, I'd put in 4. If you ordered 6, I'd put 8. If you ordered 10 nuggets, I'd put 13. If you ordered 20, I wouldn't even count. I'd straight up fill the box to the brim since no manager would ever notice that. Edit, I forgot the most important part. I used to shove so many fries into the box while every other employer used to ration. I used to put so much to the point that the box would start tearing on the side. Wow, the top comment says, I did the same once upon a time, but then somebody complained that they got too many nuggets and I got in trouble for it. What? No way. Why would somebody complain? Even if you didn't want to eat the extra nuggets and you only wanted to eat the amount of nuggets that you ordered, you could still give the nuggets away to somebody. Like it's a positive, not a negative. The comment below that says, I hope everything works out so wonderfully for you and I'm rooting for your success and happiness in everything you do. And the one below that says, I love you. Yeah, that's so much more wholesome than the first one that we read, which wasn't wholesome at all. This one says, I carry pumpkin seeds in my pocket and I plant them everywhere I go. I've been doing that for over 20 years. I carry pumpkin seeds in my pocket and I plant them everywhere I go. I've been doing it for over 20 years. There's no reason that I do this other than I find it funny. I hear whispers, I don't know how a pumpkin grew here. Lol, I never run out of seeds. I got pumpkin patches all over the country. Until next time, lend a hand and leave a smile. Okay, I love this subreddit. It's so random. The top comment says, Johnny Pumpkin Seed. The comment below that says, I've got a buddy who does this in downtown Detroit with sunflower seeds. He plants them in sad looking places and then goes back and takes a picture when they grow. And the comment below that says, so it was you. A random pumpkin grew at my apartment complex. I learnt the hard way that the stems are spiky. The next one says, my mum banked my friend. I had no idea what was going on. I had a buddy that I used to chill with after school school. One day me and said buddy went to a show. After the show, we went back to my place to crash. I remember my father not being home. Once we were asleep, my buddy awoke me and told me that he was going to go to the restroom. I thought nothing of it. After a while, I hear moaning in my parents' room. I was in so much shock that I didn't know what to do. I feel like I lost my mum to all of this. I feel a bit broken by all of this. Yeah, okay, what? I'm not ready for this subreddit. Every post that we read, I'm like, oh, I never would have expected to read this. The top comment says only logical thing to do is to bang his dad. The one below that says it's weird that he woke you up first. Possibly you dreamed the whole thing. God, I hope so. Yeah, I don't have a lot of commentary for what we're gonna read today because I'm in shock. The next one says, I've dumped over 500 pounds of trash in my girl's apartment dumpster and I've been doing it since like the third date. I run a small business and I have to throw away hundreds of boxes and plastics and such. Every time I go over, I bring a trunk full of trash and I dump it in on my way in. I worry that one day she'll be walking her dog outside waiting for me to pick her up and that she'll see me, but it hasn't happened yet. If we were to ever break up or move in together, I suppose I'd have to find a new dumpster to dump in, but honestly, I kinda like this dumpster now. Yeah, the top comment, laughing my ass off, I kinda like this dumpster now. It's a good dumpster. Honestly, they're not all the same. Yeah, I fell in love with this dumpster. It just does everything I want a good dumpster to do. This comment says, please tell us more about this amazing dumpster. And the comment below that, this could have been a Seinfeld episode. Okay, everybody, the next one that we're gonna read is called I Stood By and Allowed My Wife to Almost Kill Our Son. I was happy that she did it. I think this one's sort of popular, but I've never read it myself, so here we go. Definitely a bit nervous given the title. Hey guys, it's me from the future. I just read the story that we're about to read, and it's downright horrifying, so warning for that. Warning though, everybody, this one is so intense. It's really violent, it's really dark. It's nothing like what we've read on the channel before, so yeah, if you do want to skip it, there are chapters below. Let me tell you, I was not ready for it, but let's get into it. Okay, fair warning, this one's long as hell. I'm sorry about that, but it's very hard for me, and I've been carrying it for a lot of years. On the advice of my therapist, I've written it all out to try to work out my feelings on it. He didn't advise me to submit it to Reddit, of course, but I have struggled with this for a long time, and I need to hear other people's opinions on it. I still really have no idea how I feel about it, even after all these years, but I will submit for judgment by the masses. I know that I did wrong on some things, probably a lot of things. I tried to do my best that I could. My son was really troubled, very troubled. If you've seen the movie We Need to Talk About Kevin, it'll really help to understand what I'm talking about, because I swear to God, when I watched that film, I thought I was watching a documentary of my life. I felt like the writer must have had hidden cameras in my damn house. That's how accurate it was. The only difference is that in the movie, the boy appears normal to his father and only reveals his true nature to his mum. With my son, he didn't have that mask. His insane behavior was the same with everybody. From the day that he was born, my son just came out wrong. He was planned. My wife and I tried to get pregnant, and we were ecstatic when he was born. He was wanted and loved. We showered affection on him and really tried to give him a happy childhood. But from the day that we brought him home from the hospital, he was miserable. He cried for 13 months straight. I'm not exaggerating, 13 months without a break. He cried until he had no voice left and then kept on crying. You could see his little face all scrunched up and no sound coming out. Totally hoarse. There were times that he'd be crying in his sleep. I've never seen or heard of any other kid able to do that. We brought him to doctors, specialists, tried changing his diet, held him, rocked him, toys, swaddling, music, mobiles, everything that we could think of. Nothing worked. 13 months of grading, grinding, no sleep hell. Once he got over the crying stage, we thought that we were out of the woods, but it quickly became clear that for some unknown reason, he was just angry at being alive. I never saw that kid have a genuine joyous smile once in the time I knew him. I saw him grin a vicious, horrible grin many times, taking a perverse pleasure from causing pain or suffering or breaking a rule, but a smile from real pleasure at something nice? No, never. Not even once. He had no interest in anything positive. He was fueled by hate, and everything he did was bent towards that. As soon as he could walk, his mission in life was to destroy things. He would break or try to break anything that came in his range. Smash it, chew it, throw it in the toilet, whatever he could. After a while, he figured out how to get his diaper off, and took great pleasure in and pissing anywhere that he could. After a while, he figured out that he could hide it, and then started pissing and in places that we wouldn't find right away, grinding it into carpets, making it even more of a problem to clean and making the house stink. When he got older, ages 9 to 15, he'd piss and in our bed until we got a lock on our door and he wasn't able to get in. Then he'd just take a dump in the hallway in front of our room. That biological warfare started around 2.5 years old, and he never grew out of it. I'll try to speed it up as I could go on for days about this stuff, but as he grew older, he became more and more unmanageable. He would bite, kick, scream, scratch, and spit at anybody trying to do anything with him. He was kicked out of a school twice before he turned 9, then let back in, and then kicked him out for good. He had to change schools. The next one put him in a special class that kept him away from the other students. We had to install a door and a lock on the kitchen because he'd steal knives, and he'd use them to gouge the walls or the furniture or chase people with them. When he was 10, he stabbed me pretty good in the hip and ass. I still have the scars. As he grew older, he grew darker. He moved into setting things on fire and torturing local animals. There was a stray dog that hung out around the park near our house. My son blinded it in one eye with a barbecue fork. He'd dip cats' tails in gasoline and light them on fire. He became a violent, stinking, vicious beast that lived in our house. We couldn't do anything with him. I'll take this opportunity to preempt the tsunami of messages. Yes, we did have him in therapy. He saw a psychiatrist twice a week and had God knows how many different medications prescribed to him over the years. Nothing worked. Therapy didn't work. Meds didn't work. Nothing worked. He was like a poison cloud of hate and fury, lashing out at anything in his reach. When my son was 16, my wife got pregnant again. I can't tell you how different our reaction was. Instead of joy, we felt horror. This pregnancy had not been planned, and we really were at a loss over what to do. My son had been such an unending nightmare for 16 years. We couldn't take the idea of starting again from the beginning. We talked a lot about terminating, but A, access to abortion was not as easy in those days as it is now, and B, my wife was very against it. We talked about many options. In the end, we decided that my wife would have the baby, and if it turned out evil, we'd put it up for adoption. We knew that we couldn't do it again with another child like our son. We had a daughter and she was normal. Suddenly, we saw what our lives should have been like the whole time. How things would have been had our son not been himself. She laughed at things. She breastfed without biting. She didn't have teeth yet, but you could tell that she was only trying to eat, not tear her mum's breast off. After 4 months, she was sleeping through the night. She was happy. She was normal. I can't describe the relief and the happiness that we both felt. I don't have the words for it. This is where I believe I may have started really pulling back from my son. Up until that time, whatever mistakes I made, I'd always tried to do the best for my son, and I'm convinced of that. I tried to help him and love him and care for him. I really did try. But when my daughter was born, my wife and I both instinctively turned towards her. She became our focus, not from malice, but just because she was so much easier. She was so happy and sweet, and every moment that we were with her was like magic. I understand that's wrong, but we honestly couldn't help it. I don't have a better explanation. My son hadn't given a crap about my wife being pregnant, and I don't know if he really understood it, but when we brought our daughter home, he started acting out even more. I didn't think it was possible, but he took it up another notch. At this time, he was 17, and we were having blowout screaming matches daily. Usually after we fought, he'd storm out of the house and disappear for hours at a time, or come back the next morning. It was a relief. I started to look forward to our fights because it would get him away from us. For a while anyway. After the birth of our daughter, my relationship with my son was almost entirely gone. Our only real interactions were screaming at each other. My wife was even worse with him. She had nothing left. By that time, if our son even came into the same room as her, she would stop whatever she was doing and start screaming, "Get the f*** away from me! Get away! Get the f*** out now!" Until he left. He started spending more and more time out of the house, which was a blessing for us. I've got no idea what he got up to out in the world, but we were happy that it wasn't being inflicted on us. As a consequence of our son's behavior, we invested heavily in locks around the house. All of the cheap, thin interior doors in our home had been replaced with thick, dense wood doors that could not be kicked through, with keyed locks that my wife and I carried keys to. I know it sounds extreme, but locks and heavy doors were the best way that we'd found to create safe spaces from him. And again, before I'm inundated with messages, I was not locking my son in rooms like a prisoner. He had free reign of the house and could come and go as he pleased. My wife and I would lock ourselves in rooms to protect ourselves from him. If anything, we were the prisoners in our own home. On the day in question, I'd fought with my son in the morning and he'd left the house in a rage. My wife and I were enjoying some peace and quiet in the kitchen while our daughter napped in our bedroom, and then my daughter began crying. Any parent who has young children can tell you that you get used to your child's cries, and you can tell after a while what they need. They cry differently if they're hungry or need changing or are restless and they want to be held. Babies can communicate pretty well before they can even speak. This cry was not one of those things. This was a terror cry. The second that we heard it, my wife and I were both up out of our chairs and running to the room. The door was locked, of course, and it took a few seconds to get the right key and get it open. My son was in the room. We lived in a bungalow and the bastard had climbed in through the window to get to her. He was standing over the crib with a steak knife in his hand. I've got no idea where he got it from. It wasn't one of ours. We controlled our knives very carefully and we always kept them in locked drawers. I think he probably stole it from one of our neighbors' houses. He'd broken her skin twice already already, once in the belly area and once on her arm. I could see blood running down. When I entered the room, he was dragging the back of the knife down her face, not cutting, almost tickling her with it, teasing her while she screamed. He looked up at us and smiled. Before I knew what I was doing, I was already moving, running to put myself between them. I didn't think about it, I just moved instinctively. Even with that, my wife got there faster. It was like a movie on fast forward. She got to our son and bashed his hand away, knocking the knife across the room, and then shoved him with all of her body weight so hard that he flew away from the crib and bounced off the wall. I picked up my daughter and I held her while my wife screamed it. I could see her shaking, almost convulsing. I can remember the smell of the room, the sound of my daughter screaming and the wailing, the look on my son's face as he just stood there, just nothing, blank, dead. There was nothing in his eyes, no emotion. He looked like an alien to me. I watched my wife take a step towards him. I could have reached out and stopped her, but I didn't. She stepped forward again, very close to him. I could have stopped her again, but I didn't. She waited, looking at him for maybe 3 to 5 seconds without moving, and then she punched him in the face. Now, until this point, you may have been picturing my wife as a typical woman, small frame, dainty, delicate. This is not the case. My wife does have a small frame, but dainty and delicate she's not. Never has been since I've known her. Since her early teens, my wife has been a boxer. MMA didn't exist back then, but karate and boxing were big in those days. And my wife was a very talented amateur. She was about 130 pounds. She carried a lot of muscle and she knew how to punch. I had 70 pounds on her back then, and I have no doubt that in a real fight between me and her, she could have and would have pounded me flat. Neither of us have ever laid a hand on our son in anger before, but something broke in her that day, and all the years of anger and pain and sorrow and frustration came pouring out. When she hit him, his head snapped back and blood started pouring out of his nose. He hardly reacted, just looking at her with a shocked expression, like he didn't know how to process what had just happened. She waited another second and then she hit him again. I could have reached out and stopped her. I could have dragged her out of the room, taken her away, calmed her, but I didn't. I just stood there watching while she systematically started to pound him to a pulp. Every time he brought his hands to cover one punch, she would blast him somewhere else. Body, head, over and over. He started screaming, crying out, yelling for her to stop. It's the most genuine reaction I'd ever seen him give to anything in his whole life. But she wasn't stopping. I watched her ramping up, hitting harder, faster, working him like a heavy bag. He tried to swing at her and she slipped him easily. She was on autopilot, sinking down into her training. I stood there watching for a minute and then I turned my back on them and I took my daughter out of the room. I brought my daughter to the kitchen and I gave her a bath in the sink. I found that he had cut her a third time on the sole of her foot. All the cuts were superficial. I cleaned her up and I held her until she calmed. I put polysporin and band-aids on her cuts. In our bedroom, I could hear my son screaming, calling my wife horrible names, telling her that he would cut her head off and her corpse. After a while, I didn't hear him saying anything anymore. Didn't even hear him crying out. I assumed that he must have been knocked out, but I could still hear her him. That went on for a long time, long enough for my daughter to drift off to sleep in my arms. I just sat at the kitchen table waiting for her to finish. Finally, she came out and she sat down across from me. Her hands were swollen and red. Her face and arms were splattered with blood. Her chest was heaving. We just stared at each other without saying anything. After a while, I asked her, "Is he dead?" She looked back at me and answered, "I hope so," and I nodded. That was all there was to say about it. I understood how she felt perfectly. I felt the same. I didn't know what to do, so we just sat there waiting silently. Eventually, my wife started crying and went to go take a shower. I just stayed where I was holding our daughter. After a long while, I heard moaning and sobbing coming from our room. It turned out that my son wasn't dead. I went in to see how bad it was, and it was pretty bad. I've never seen a more merciless laid onto anybody. He was lying on the floor, rolling around with blood leaking out of his face, lying in a pool of vomit. His nose was squashed flat across his face. Both of his eyes were completely swollen shut and started to blacken already. I could see that a couple of his fingers were bent out at weird angles and he'd peed his pants. I think he must have been missing teeth, but I couldn't see any on the floor and I couldn't see inside his mouth. His lips were all puffed and swollen. From talking to my wife about it later, I know now that she'd systematically bitten every part of his body, focusing heavily on his legs. She told me that she kicked him in the groin repeatedly until her legs got tired and had kept on his body long after he'd passed out. When my wife came out of the shower, I still didn't know what to do about our son. I didn't know whether to call the police or an ambulance, take him to the hospital myself. I didn't have any idea what to do. After a while, I realized that I simply didn't care what happened to him anymore, and we decided to just let him live or die on his own. There was an in-law suite in the basement that we'd never really used, and my wife, my daughter, and I just moved in down there. We simply ceded the top floor of the house to my son and locked everything down, separated our lives entirely. There was plenty of food in the upstairs cabinet cabinets, enough for a couple of weeks or more. He had a washroom and bedrooms to use. We had a washroom in the basement, a small kitchenette, and a separate entrance, so we stopped going upstairs. We just decided that we were done with him. I figured that we'd let his food run out and then see what happened. Over the next week, we could hear him moving around upstairs sometimes. I think he spent most of the time lying in bed recovering. I went to work watching on high alert in case he attacked me in the driveway, but he never did. My wife was staying at home with our daughter. She was never out of our sight. One night we heard him going ballistic, smashing things and banging. We didn't respond. He never tried to get downstairs or get near us though. I think he was afraid that if he got near us again, my wife might finish the job on him. After 3 weeks down in the basement, we hadn't heard anything from above for a few days, and I ventured upstairs to the main floor of the house. The place was demolished and there was no sign of my son. He was gone. It took months to repair the damage he'd done and get the main floor back to normal again. There was food and crap smeared all over the walls and broken glass on the floor, big holes in the drywall. He'd ripped the place apart. He tore up the lino in a corner of the kitchen, emptied an entire foam fire extinguisher in the living room. I feel thankful that he didn't burn the house down with us in it. I'm not sure why he didn't. The kid wasn't shy about lighting things on fire. After that, I lived in fear every day that he would come back, that he'd ambush us out of the blue and try to kill us. We moved house about 3 years later and I finally stopped being afraid that he'd show up again. As now, he had no idea where we were and I finally felt safe from him. All this happened a long time ago. My son was born in the spring of 1971 and my daughter was born in 88. I'm an old man now. My daughter is 31 now. I moved in with her and her husband after my wife passed away. I've got 2 granddaughters and they're the joy of my life. I see a therapist a couple of times a month to talk about all of this. I don't know where my son is. The last time I saw him, he was lying on the floor of our bedroom, bleeding and smashed. I haven't heard from him since he left. More than 30 years now. I don't want to. I carry a lot of guilt from that time and a lot of conflicted emotions. I didn't hurt him myself, but I allowed him to be and I thought he deserved it. I was happy that it happened. I didn't try to kill him, but I would have been happy if he died. I will say that I do hope he's able to overcome his demons and go live a normal life somewhere. If he wasn't able to do that, if he stayed the way that he was, then I truly do hope somebody out there killed him. When I knew him, he was a rabid dog, and whichever way it went, I hope he's not still out there hurting anybody. Oh my God. I have never read anything like this. No wonder this is a well-known story. I don't even know what to say. I understand why people have read this now though. Yeah, like this comment says, this is so intense. Like what the hell, that's a lot to sink in. That sounds like a demon, not a child. Yeah, I still don't know what to say. I guess we move on. I'm in shock. The next one says, it was me and I never told anybody about it until now. So a few years ago, I worked at a veterinary clinic. During a routine exam while I was performing a TPR, temperature pulse respiration, I felt a gassy fart brewing. Oh, that's so wild. This is going to be completely different from what we just read. The complete opposite. I felt a gassy fart brewing, and I knew it was going to be one of those silent but deadly ones. I took one peek around the back office to make sure that I was alone before letting it out. This particular patient was ready for discharge, and I was about to bring the dog out to his owner when the DVM walked past. I thought that she'd gone to lunch. She stopped suddenly, took one quick sniff of the air, and proclaimed, "Oh God!" Feeling panicked, I quickly joined in on her self-proclamation by saying, "I know, right?" Literally the dumbest thing I could have said. This specific provider owned the clinic that I was working out of and decided the dog needed a bath before we could discharge him to the owner. No charge, free bath, an unnecessary bath. Who do you think she asked to bathe that dog? Oh, that's amazing. And it feels so good to read that after what we just read. I feel like I'm going to be thinking about that story for years. Like I still don't even know what to say about that story. I'm going to read all your comments about it, guys. But yeah, that was so wild. The next one says, I fake an accent at my job. My heart's pounding writing this because I've never told anybody this. So I work at this one store and I work on the sales floor, but before all of that, I was only one person interviewing for a position at the store. Before I arrived for my interview, a friend of mine dared me to interview in a British accent. I said that I'd do it only if they paid me, and to my surprise, they sent me like $10 through Venmo, which was more than enough for me. Okay, this is already so funny. I went into the interview with the mindset that I wasn't going to get hired, and they inevitably hired me on the spot, accent and all. I was nervous because I'd already talked to a whole bunch of higher-ups with the accent, and I decided to just go through with it, thinking that it was only going to be a summer job, and I was wrong. It's been like 7 months that I've been working there, and I still use the accent to this day. When people ask me where I'm from, I just tell them my hometown because I've got several Brits from that town who I grew up with. The accent hasn't really posed a problem until now because my boyfriend is friends with one of my co-workers, so I'm going to have to find the right time to come clean. Thank you to coming to my TED Talk. Update, I finally told my boyfriend boyfriend about the accent, and he said, and I quote, "Well, babe, you just gotta fake it until you make it, and then get the hell out of there. I got a lucky one, yo." This comment says, apparently a kid in the States acquired a British accent solely from watching Peppa Pig. That's so unbelievably interesting. But also, like, I'm not surprised either. Maybe that's what happened to OP. Maybe they were watching too much Peppa Pig. The next one says, I shoplifted over $6,000 worth of clothing in one stint. This was almost 10 years ago. I was a sales associate as a teen at a well-known chain retail skate store. It was a cool job, but my store manager sucked. Just rude and aggressive all the time. Bullied the staff every day. I rocked it as a salesperson. I doubled my goals almost daily. Always at least met them. One day the store manager got our numbers for the quarter. We were a little bit behind where we should have been, but there were also 2 new associates who weren't carrying their weight. Store manager blamed me for the numbers and accused me of giving discounts to people and allowing others to shoplift. I had never done either of those things. I was so livid. So one night with a group of 4 friends or so, one of which used to work at the same store with me, we came up with a plan to raid the place to give the store manager something to actually complain about. So I went into my shift on a Sunday morning, knowing the assistant manager would be hungover. I convinced him to take a nap out back and that I wouldn't tell if he let me claim the sales for the day. He didn't care about anything, so it was an easy yes. Cue my friends coming in acting surprised with their beach bags as I'm working with regular customers on the floor alone. A quote-unquote customer, a friend, would bring their purchase to the counter to ring out and have the security tags taken off, and then immediately go into the changing room and bag it. Bring it to their cars, wait 20 minutes, do it all over again. We all had lists of items that we wanted, and I had mine piled on the counter ready to be taken. In an hour, we completed the list and my friends left. The assistant manager came back from his nap oblivious. I wrapped up my shift and I went home. We divided up the clothing and we celebrated. Never got caught. I put my notice in the next day and that was that. An old friend from work told me that when the next quarterly report came out, after I quit, the numbers were so bad from shrink, inventory of clothing missing without any money to show for it, the store manager got demoted. Was it wrong? Yeah. Would I do it again? No. Do I regret it? Not even a little bit. This comment says, I read the title and I imagined OP walking out of the store with hella layers on. The comment below that one says, don't get me wrong, I'm judging you, but I'm also impressed. The next one says, I stole thousands of dollars in change over 2 years working at McDonald's. When I was 16, I got a job at McDonald's. I hated making food and working at the front counter. I always asked to work the drive-through window, taking money at the first window. This was before credit cards, so everybody paid in cash. All I would do is keep a quarter or a dime of almost everybody's change I gave back. I'd put that extra quarter or dime in a special spot in the register. Once I got 5 or 10 worth of change, I'd dump the change into the right spot and pocket a 10 or a 5. Some nights I'd leave with over $50 in cash, which was a lot to 16-year-old me. Nobody ever caught on, and only twice I can remember people telling me that I gave them the wrong amount of change back. I'd act like a dumb kid who miscounted. I don't know how nobody at work caught on, because I always had a ton of change at the end of the day. Edit number 1, I never was trying to get over on McDonald's. It was purely a selfish act. Edit number 2, this is a confession, not something that I'm proud of. Edit 3, it was 16 years ago. Yeah, credit cards were around, but not wildly in use yet. Edit 4, I don't think working fast food is a bad job for a teenager, nor do I think they abused me or mistreated me. This comment says, there's a girl working the cash register at a Chipotle that always shortchanges me and then acts stupid when I correct her. I think she's running the same racket as OP. The next one says, I let my son believe that he's a dinosaur because it helps him sleep better. I love how different these are. My 2.5-year-old thinks that he's a dinosaur, like 24/7 acting like a dinosaur. It started at about a year old when I made him a dinosaur hoodie for Halloween. He started pretending a lot and roaring at everybody. Then in transitioning from crib to bed, he picked out dinosaur sheets and it's all dinosaurs all the time from then on. He roars constantly and at total strangers. He has a whole dinosaur family of toys that follow him everywhere. He walks like a dino and tells me every morning what new species he is and gets really upset when I forget today's type. At first I thought it was cute, then after a week I got concerned. Now after a couple of months I've fully embraced it. With an active 2-year-old it is sometimes hard to get them to calm down and go to bed. But since the dinosaur awakening, he's gone to bed flawlessly. So long as I pretend that he's a long neck traveling to the Great Valley, a land before time reference for those who don't know. I spin this big story and he shuts his eyes and gets so excited. It's his favorite thing in the world. My favorite thing in the world is hearing a quiet whispered roar in response to my good night, I love you. He'll probably be upset one day when he discovers that I've used his overactive imagination to trick him into sleeping and eating broccoli and walking faster on our hikes. But on the other hand, I've got 2 months worth of super cute videos of him speaking dinosaur, so I think I'm okay about it. This comment says roar means I love you in dinosaur. Yeah, I love how the stories on this subreddit are either either wholesome or downright terrifying. It's hard to believe how different these are. The next one says, I love it when my boyfriend puts things away in the wrong place. Sometimes when my boyfriend comes over, and especially if I'm a little bit down or busy, he'll put away any of the dishes I've left on the drying rack or in the dishwasher. It's such a sweet little gesture, and it makes me feel so loved. He tries his best, but he always puts something away in the wrong spot, like the wrong cupboard or drawer. But whenever I open the saucepan drawer and I find a grater, my heart melts, and it makes me smile thinking of him doing these things to try to brighten my day. Oh, that's so beautiful. Yeah, that's so cute. Oh, I love reading about people that are in love, not like about to get a divorce or something, like all the other stuff that we read. The next one says, I've done nothing at work for a decade. I've got a great job in Canada doing data entry and analytics. I would prefer not to give the field of work as it is pretty specific. $70,000 a year, benefits, whole 9 yards. Really awesome. The confession is that all of my info is pulled from standard Excel files made by other people. In my first month, I made a macro that pulls from 50 plus places on our shared drive and compiles a 5-page report daily. The email sends itself at random times around 2:30 every day, Monday to Friday. Everybody thinks I'm amazing at my job. I'm the laziest that you'll ever meet. I'm almost done getting a VPN function approved that will allow me to do work from home. Edit because this blew up. I'm using a throwaway account, so no worries about my boss finding out. A lot of questions about what I'm doing with my time. I've actually done a program with work that allows me to get my education for free. I have my master's now and I'm working on some other things. A lot of positive comments about working smart, not hard. Much appreciated. How long did it take for me to figure it out? I did the old way for 2 weeks before I realized what I could do. Took another week of doing the report while working on the macro. Then a week of troubleshooting. So about a month after I started, it became automated. And people have asked me about vacations and sick days. I've got a work laptop, so sick days are not an issue. Although I think I've called in twice in 10 years. Vacations, I just disable it. Simple. Small funny story on the topic though. When we had our first child, he came 3 weeks early. I was so caught up that I completely forgot about the email. Otherwise, I would have disabled it. It sent out and I received accolades for being so dedicated. Wow, that's so interesting. The top comment says, when you eventually leave or retire, are you going to reveal your secret? The second top comment says, well, you are indeed amazing. Pulling info from 50 plus places and compiling a single report, sending them during the day and keeping it working for a decade. I'd be pretty happy with you as an employee. Keep up the good work, man. Somebody can do their job because you did yours and you kept it going for a decade. Don't undermine yourself. The next one says, I'm asking my girlfriend to marry me tomorrow morning and I'm super excited. That's all. I haven't told very many people yet. Have a great day, everybody. Edit, thank you for all the encouraging words. To everybody who's upset that I posted here, my apologies if it ruined your day. I'll provide an update tomorrow morning. I couldn't wait and I went home early from work. It's a yes. Hope everybody has a great weekend. This is one of the happiest days of my life. Oh, congratulations. That is so unbelievably beautiful. Oh, that's so cute. I feel like we should end the episode there. That was such an adventure of an episode and I hope you guys had a great time today. Before you do go, I've got 2 cute wholesome memes to show you. I've definitely read this one before, but I need to read it again. Reasons to get a chameleon. They grab anything you give them. That is so cute. I'm a cute little knight. Even that little sword is adorable. I love chameleons now. And this one too. My dog slept over at his girlfriend's house and this is how they fell asleep. How beautiful. Just a little something wholesome after what we've read today. I'm still shocked about the stuff that we've read today. And yeah, let me know in the comment section if you want more videos on this subreddit. And make sure you like the video and subscribe if you want to. And the comment of the day today goes to Ryan. Why does nobody know what a joke is? I swear every day we have somebody claiming that they're joking, but it's just bullying. Yeah, I know, right? It's actually ridiculous. And yeah, you're right, Ryan. We do pretty much every single day. And they're always like, oh, I'm only being honest, or I'm only joking, or like, how could you take me serious? When yeah, all they're doing is bullying. It's kind of baffling, isn't it? I can't believe the stuff that we read, and especially in today's episode. And thank you for the support, everybody. It means so much to me. Make sure you look after yourself and make sure you have a beautiful, amazing rest of your day. And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!